I think it's safe to say that inequality is getting worse, not better. And one thing that we very often hear policymakers and businesses and corporations say is that we need to have inclusive growth, but the evidence on the ground would seem to suggest that little progress is being made on that score.
I would like to put the matter of inequality into a bigger picture. And I keep telling the story, which is an ancient story, and I guess as every other good story, its origin is from Greece, I suppose. You will recognize it. But it's the story about the grandfather who tells a bedtime story to a grandchild. And the grandfather says that within every person there are two wolves that fight about space. It's one wolf, the first one is the dark wolf that represents everything that is bad, you know, violence and revenge and hatred and all of that. And then there is a good wolf, the other one that represents love and compassion and everything that we need as humanity, as we need as humans. And of course, in the end, the grandchild asks, but which wolf wins? And the grandfather says, the one you feed. Yeah. And I really think that we are in a situation in the world today where it has become a kind of fight between good and evil in a way. And I think that if democracy does not deliver economic growth and prosperity and the hope for a better future, then people will lose faith in democracy and in democratic institutions as well.
Inequality is a key word through human history, but it has different forms from century to century, from era to era. The recent decades in Western democracies, in modern democracies, we had combined democracy and relative justice prosperity. So there was a strong middle class, there was social mobility. This is not the case today. And this is why we have this increase of inequalities. Why? Because globalization, as it was shaped because of the free movement of capital, of fourth industrial revolution, of new geopolitical balance, things changed. So we have to see what has changed and what are ideas to find new solutions to new problems. It is obvious that automation will bring, or already brings in many Western societies, job losses. In short term, let's be optimistic, job losses in short term, and maybe a creation of jobs in the future. But these jobs will need totally different kind of skills. And we are not prepared for these skills, and we do not prepare our young children for these skills. So on the one side, it's labor market. The major impact of these changes in labor market are in the welfare state. Welfare state is the cornerstone of European dream, of European achievements. But this welfare state cannot continue to function as was the case 20 years ago. And when there are no concrete answers to these new problems, populism is coming.
I actually believe that a lot of the correlation with democracy is how well the economy goes. If people feel that they're better off, even in systems like China or what we've seen in Singapore or in other places of the world, as long as people feel that their own situation is better, they're actually willing to accept different forms of democracy that we might not want to accept in the parts of the world that we came from. And when economies become more difficult, then populism or nationalism, racism, xenophobia and all these things take over, and that is what you're seeing. So the main thing that we need to do is to get these economies to work for everybody. Unfortunately, we've seen over the last 20, 30 years, it's not an issue for the last 10 years, but the last 20, 30 years, the biggest part of society has not seen these meaningful improvements. People have discovered in the crisis of 2007, 2008, this famous financial crisis, I guess it became very clear to people that the banks might have been too big to fail, but certainly the people were too small to matter. They've seen their income stagnate or go down. They've seen the cost of housing, of healthcare, of education go up. And it is a pure fact that in any place in Europe or the US and in many other places in the world, in fact, the middle class has been eroding.
Actually, there is an agenda that provides a holistic view of all of this. It's called Agenda 2030, that combines the different elements that we need to take into account and plan for in a way that we ensure both peace and security and prosperity for people. And you were absolutely right in saying that democracy can only thrive if people also see that they will get something out of democracy. So maybe we need a more modern, updated story about democracy.
We should be bringing, again, sanity to the economic system by making the financial market subservient to the real economy, and not the real economy being subservient to the financial market. It is ludicrous that we have It is ludicrous. Well, it's not worse than applause. It's a sad situation. It's ludicrous that we have a 90 trillion global economy and we've created financial instruments that are 600 to 700 trillion. So no wonder that you see the financial market becoming shorter and shorter term and chasing these incredibly tight targets around shareholder primacy. You cannot solve the issues of food security, of climate change, of inequality if you run the rat race on the corner. When I became CEO of Unilever, I stopped it right away. I did it the first day I came in the office because I figured the first day they hire me, they don't fire me. I stopped giving guidance. I moved the whole thing to the long term, and it served us well. But it's a multi-stakeholder model. We cannot run this business just for shareholders. The second thing that we need to do is define success differently. It's not a question of the definition of competition, of capitalism. But if capitalism is simply defined as maximizing return on financial capital, we're very good at it. You see, and some people seem to be even better at it. But why not maximize the return on social and environmental capital as well?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that is on the global level what is necessary to do. And of course, unless we listen to people like Greta Thunberg, we're going to hell and very quickly. But I think that there is one thing what we do at the global level, and then there is one thing what can governments do. And I think if we want to address this particular problem, of course, you have to make sure that you reduce income inequality, and you have to strengthen social security nets. You actually have to also reduce insecurity in the labor markets, because otherwise people will not come along also in supporting democracy. And we need to take care of our democratic systems, because without that, we will go into even more of a violent downward spiral, and that is very dangerous for a country and for the world.
Which we're already seeing. Well, I'm afraid we'll have to leave it there. We would love to have more time for questions, but the bottom line seems to be that there remain huge challenges ahead, and all of you up here have a lot of work to do. So, thank you very much to our panelists, and let's welcome the next panel.